Welcome to my house. Welcome to the Structure Talk podcast, a production of Structure Tech Home Inspections. My name is Reuben Saltzman. I'm your host, alongside building science geek Tessa Murry. We help home inspectors up their game through education, and we help homeowners to be better stewards of their houses. We've been keeping it real on this podcast since 2019, and we are also the #1 home inspection podcast in the world, according to my mom. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to the Structure Talk podcast. I am here with my co-host, Tessa Murry. As always, Tessa, how is sunny Florida?
Hey, Reuben. Yes, I am broadcasting from Florida today. I can't complain. It is a sunny, 78-degree day, a nice breeze, and it's March.
You got your windows open.
Windows are open. Yeah, windows open. It's pretty wonderful. So,
that
sorry
amazing.
to brag.
Oh, yeah.
How about Minnesota? What's going on up there?
Let's talk about something else. No, just kidding. It's a beautiful sunny day, and it's in the mid 30s right now. We're back to kind of winter. Yeah. Although, you know what? Today, the day we're recording, I think today is officially the first day of spring.
It's the vernal equinox today.
The vernal equinox. And what does that mean? It means we have the exact same amount of daylight,
equal
and
day
night,
and night.
Right? Okay.
I think it means like the planet is completely like vertical, perpendicular to the sun. It's not tilting forward or backwards. So we all have equal day and night, I think.
All right. Good. Well, that's all I got to say about the weather here.
We're headed in the right direction.
We're going
Hold
in the
on,
right direction.
because you knew that there was going to be another winter after those 70-degree days that you had.
Of course. But I've already got in a fair bit of disc golfing this year.
That's impressive.
Normally, I don't get to throwing until April if I'm lucky. So I count myself very lucky this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, global warming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm not complaining.
Sorry.
It's good. Well, talking about global warming and things people try to do to stop it. I'm doing my best at a transition. Wait a minute, Tess, hold on. Shout out to our show sponsors.
There we go. Yes.
IEB.
Almost forgot.
Inspector Empire Builder. Fantastic organization. I talk about them every week. We've got the IEB Unite coming up in May. This is the big conference that IEB has every year. It's going to be in San Antonio, Texas. It's at the very end of May. It's going to be May 28th through the 30th. Tons of education, tons of networking. It's just a fantastic group of people. We start the days doing group workouts for everybody who is into that kind of thing. I'm just looking at this photo from a few years ago. There is a gang of us. I mean, there's got to be probably 50 people in this group that did the morning workout. We all got up before breakfast, went out and did a big exercise. If I remember right, we did the Murph, a modified version of the Murph, which is where you run a mile and you do 100 pull-ups. I think we did sit-ups instead because we didn't have pull-up bars. You do 200 push-ups and 300 air squats, and then you run a mile. And
wow, sounds like a great morning.
It was awesome, and I don't think we did the full thing.
Your perfect morning.
It's pretty
waking
perfect.
up at 5 and doing an intense workout. Yes,
but the thing is, I'm looking at a group. There's like 50 of us here. I mean, this is driven, motivated group of people.
Yes.
And
yes.
I don't think you get
I just
that
don't like the
physical.
I've never been a fan of the physical pain.
I know what you mean. It's an acquired taste.
It is. You know what? Since I've been in Florida, I have been doing a lot more kayaking recently.
Oh, really?
With a little bit more of this free time. And I would much rather be, paddling my butt off to get away from a gator for my cardio than doing that.
Where are you kayaking?
Oh, there's so many good places here. Okay, so recently, we were just at a county park that is south of Tampa along the bay, E.G. Simmons Park. Before that, though, a beautiful place called King's Landing. The water is like, there's different parts to it, but there's crystal clear water. You can see the bottom. It's this little kind of freshwater stream, I think, although there can be alligators in it. Anyways, absolutely beautiful. That was fun. And then the Alafaya River is another location we've been to. And
You've
so
been
it's
all
just
over.
there's so many good spots to kayak. You just have to be careful. We went 2 days ago and we kind of worked our way in this little inlet. Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole. Short story.
Whatever.
This little inlet, and
this is our podcast.
all of a sudden it's true. I have been waiting to see an alligator live in person since I've been here. Have not at all.
They're everywhere, aren't they?
Apparently they are, but I keep missing them. And we were paddling, and all of a sudden there was this splash, like right in front of our boat, and I missed it. But Andrew said that was an alligator. I was like, oh my gosh, it was a baby one that was like 3 feet long.
Okay.
I missed it, and then there happened to be splashes off to my left, like a couple feet away, and flying out of the mangroves were snakes. A couple snakes like fell out too, just right next to the boat. I was like, oh my gosh. All right. I'd rather have snakes falling next to me than spiders though. So I was okay with that. But
that's a tough one. I don't know what I'd prefer.
No, if it's in the boat, that's a different story. But
yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. So there's a lot of great like outdoor adventure opportunities here, and I would prefer that to be my exercise. I hate running. I hate the marathon stuff. I admire people that can do that, but I have never been one for pain. So
yeah, I'm with you. The running is not my jam. It's just something you had to do before and after.
Yeah.
I'll do it, but I'm going to be slow.
I'm sure you're a lot faster than I am. Anyways, I run for like 2 minutes. I'm like, I'm done. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, that was a tangent. Anyways, I'm excited to get into what the topic of the day is today, Reuben. Do you want to introduce it? We teased it last time.
All right. I teased it, and here's how I'll present it. Tessa,
Mm-hmm.
The more energy efficient you make a house, the less durable that house will be, all things being equal. Change my mind. There's your challenge.
That is a tough challenge. Well, first of all, I mean, that could be a very polarizing statement. And this is a tricky one. This is a tricky one because, it makes you not want to build an energy efficient house because you're like, why would I do that? Why would I take those risks or create those problems? But that is the predicament we're in. Like, if you want to have a more energy efficient house that takes less money to heat and cool, is more environmentally friendly, let's draw on, the utilities and the systems and everything, you need it to be energy efficient. But as soon as you start adding insulation and making it more airtight, you reduce the amount of transfer of energy through the building envelope, and you don't have the same kind of, at least in a cold climate, you don't have the heat moving through the wall like you used to and the airflow moving through the wall. Yep. And in a hot humid climate, you don't have the same transfer of heat. So it can, in some situations, some climates, by making it more airtight, it makes the house less durable, less likely to dry out. Yeah. Okay, you've got your hand raised.
You said in some climates. Are there any climates where this doesn't apply? I'm pushing you, Tess.
I know. Okay, so here's what I was just thinking, and I don't have much experience with this yet, but spending more time in a very hot, humid climate in southern Florida, if it's really hot and humid outside and it's cold inside, you got your AC running, you're pulling in hot, humid air through the cracks in the building envelope. Heat moves from more to less. Moisture moves from more to less. And so you are actively pulling in that humid air through any sort of leaks in the building envelope that could potentially create condensation issues if and when that hot, humid air touches a cooler inside surface. So in that sense, like some air leakage, I mean, you are making more energy efficient building by adding more insulation and making that difference between the inside and outside greater, the temperature difference. However, if you have still some of that hot, humid air moving through, it could condense and create moisture problems. But again, that goes back to this whole question of you're adding more insulation, you're making it more airtight. Before, if you're not doing that, you don't have any insulation, you don't have to worry about condensation. That
Nope.
hot, humid air isn't going to touch anything cold. As
Nope.
soon as you're trying to start control your environment and make it cooler, if you have a little bit of air leakage, that's when you run into problems. That's when you get condensation. And so there's this gray area. It's like you can make a house more energy efficient, but you have to make sure you're conscious of any potential air leakage that's happening through the building envelope, because if you just even have a little bit in an extreme climate like Minnesota or southern Florida, you will get condensation problems. It's very unforgiving because now
Yes.
there's less heat transfer, or there's less ability for it to dry. You've got a wall cavity that's filled with insulation. Condensation does get in there. It can't dry. It's less durable. It's less forgiving. So you have to be really detailed and cautious when you are building an energy efficient house, or when you're adding more insulation, to control pathways that air is taking through that building envelope.
Agreed. And that's why I say all things being equal. It's not to say that if you make a super energy efficient house, it won't be durable.
Right.
We can still do it and make it durable, but you can't leave all things equal. That's the important part. I mean, you take a stick frame house and you have no insulation in the walls, and you have all kinds of air leakage and all kinds of energy loss. You can have leaky outside walls. You can have water leaking in every time it rains, and you may not have any consequences. And if you do have consequences, it's going to take a long time for them to show up, and they're not going to be severe. And now you put insulation, you put an air barrier in, and that exact same leak is going to be catastrophic.
Yeah, something if the wetting is greater than the drying, then it stays wet and you've got a problem. So you reduce the drying potential by adding more insulation and adding these vapor barriers or air barriers. So you really have to pay attention to moisture coming from the outside and coming from the inside.
Yeah, agreed. And
so it's a trade-off.
Let's talk about other stuff. What is going to be more problematic? What would be worse for a house? Having a gravity furnace where you are half of your heat is wasted into the chimney, and you got a big chimney just going up on the outside of the house. It's masonry. Or you have an 80% efficient furnace venting into that same chimney, and it only loses a little bit of heat going up the chimney. Which chimney is going to perform better?
The hot one, obviously. You won't have to worry about condensation of the flue gases on the inside of the liner or the chimney, and you don't have to worry about that eating through the chimney or degrading it or anything like that. If it stays hot, it stays dry. You don't have to worry about condensation and degradation. It's the exact same principle. So that's a great example, Reuben.
All right, so that's chimneys. Let's talk about furnaces again. You've got an 80% efficient furnace heating your house, and then and where does it take its combustion air?
From the house.
Okay. And where does the house get its combustion air?
From the outside.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to change that over to a high efficiency, 95% efficient furnace. Where does that get all of its combustion air?
Directly from the outside. It does not change the dynamics of pressures in the house.
So which one makes for a happier house? From a building performance aspect, not energy.
Okay, well, that's a great question. I would say it depends. Are we talking about kind of a I guess when you're running your furnace, it's going to be cold outside. So in theory, it will be drier air. So you're
Yep.
pulling in dry air through these cracks and leaks in the building envelope, which in theory is going to potentially dry out the house, dry out the building envelope, which
Yep.
is better for durability.
Yep.
So in that case, you're getting this air exchange from inside to outside through the building envelope, uncontrolled, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't leave all things equal. You can't just take that furnace out and go to a high efficiency furnace and expect your house to perform the same way. You can't leave all things equal. You need to do something else. You need to add another device that's going to do what your old furnace used to do. We call them air exchangers or heat recovery ventilators or energy recovery ventilators to help offset that durability impact we get by upgrading our furnace.
Well, and when you say durability, define durability, because in my mind, the ERV isn't necessarily going to provide the same kind of drying that was happening with pulling in outside dry air through the building envelope with the old type of furnace running. In ERV, if it's installed properly, it's supposed to provide balanced ventilation. It's not creating a negative pressure or positive pressure, pulling air through the building envelope or pushing it out. So it's literally just an isolated system that's pulling air from the outside, mixing it with your internal air and whatever. So in terms of building durability, I don't know if like the ERV, if I would look at it that way, but it definitely provides airflow on the inside, better indoor air quality, and it can help reduce humidity levels on the inside of the house, which does lead to durability. So there's durability in that sense of controlling indoor humidity levels.
Yeah,
okay.
Is the humidity, because it's replacing humid indoor air with dry outdoor air. Yeah.
And there's so many, people that I'm working with these days that are in that stage where they've had these kind of updates to their homes. They've put in higher efficiency furnaces or appliances, but they don't have any additional ventilation, and they're having issues. And most recently, this was a kind of a 1960s modern home in one of the suburbs in the Twin Cities, and it had a very low slope roof, like a 312. It was a ranch style house, and it had vaulted ceilings, and it had a tongue and groove wood finish on the inside, and it had some big exposed beams along the peak. And this couple bought the house, and they needed a new roof, and so they ripped off the old roof and worked with a contractor, and the contractor installed spray foam in between the rafters and then put the roof deck back on. And they did a hot roof, so there was no continuous ventilation or anything like that from the soffits to the peak. Yep. And right away, the homeowners had moisture issues. So in the wintertime, they had water dripping in several locations through the tongue and groove, not from an ice dam. There were no ice dams this winter. Sure. It was after we had really long cold spells of, below zero weather. And then the first warm up we got, they had the water dripping in. And then the second moisture events were happening in the summertime. And this is something I haven't seen that much of or heard that much of happening, but they had a lot of moisture forming on the beams in some areas of the house and in the ceiling, and it was dripping down as well. So like in their kitchen and in the bathroom, and these beams actually, it's a beautiful home. It's a mid-century kind of design home, beautiful woodwork. But these beams go continuously through the house. They are the structure, but they also go through the exterior walls and out to the soffits. Like they're a structural member that goes all the way through the wall. Yeah. So when it's, really hot outside and humid outside, and it's cold inside, and they got their AC running, that cold air is that beam was cold where they had some air vents, and that hot humid air was just condensing on those beams as well that were colder on the inside, because they did have some air leakage through the spray foam. They did some blower door testing and IR imaging, and there were areas where there was air leaking through that hot roof. And so that hot humid air is being pulled inside through those little leaks, through the foam, those little pathways, and then touching those cold beams and condensing. And so they were having a lot of moisture issues too. And part of the problem is as well, is that by doing this hot roof, they also spray foamed their rim joists. So they spray foamed a pretty leaky portion of the house, at the rim joist, and then they did an entire hot roof. And so they really changed how leaky this house was. So we talk about durability. They increase the energy efficiency tremendously by doing all this insulation, improved insulation, and air sealing. But now they've got all these condensation moisture issues happening in winter and in summer. So with decreased ability to dry because there's no airflow through any of the attic spaces. So if something gets wet, it stays wet. And so then that's when you start rotting out roof decking and creating other problems. So the challenge was this spray foam, it had so many leaks in it, and I couldn't figure out why. And I think part of the reason was the contractors, because of the tongue and groove, there was no vapor barrier, poly, or anything like that behind the tongue and groove. So it was just the tongue and groove and then the attic space, and like a 2x6 rafter, and then the roof decking. And they put cardboard down against the back side of the tongue and groove. So they had a backer for their spray foam, so it didn't come out through the cracks, which I totally get. You can't have spray foam coming out every little crack in the house. I mean, that's going to be a huge problem. You're going to get callbacks, complaints from the homeowner. So they put this cardboard down, but because that spray foam wasn't adhered to the tongue and groove, there was a lot of air leakage happening kind of between the cardboard and the tongue and groove and all these exterior wall tops and transitions and everything.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just creating these little channels and tunnels for that air to flow through.
Convection.
Which is, and convection. Yeah. Yes, all of it. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of the perfect storm. They also changed out their AC unit. They got a new one put in, and it might be oversized. I asked them, I said, when the AC runs in the summer, does it run for a really long time when it's really hot outside, or is it short little periods? And they're like, oh, it just runs for a little bit and then shuts off. I'm like, okay, so we've got we've got a house that now has a ton of spray foam, making a lot more airtight, and we don't have any kitchen exhaust fan. We've got one bath fan for the whole house. And you've got an AC that's oversized, not running, helping with humidity issues. And now you've got, all these moisture problems. So it really is. It's like, you want to make your house more energy efficient, but you have to kind of really think about, again, the house is a system. And if you make it more airtight, how do you provide the fresh air you need, the air quality you need, dehumidification if you need that? You might be installing an ERV, more bath fans, potentially even for this house. I said it might be a good idea to get a dehumidifier for this house because of the design and the style and everything that's been done to it. You guys have all this excess humidity. Look into something like that.
Yeah.
Not to mention just the potential problems with the moisture. That's a whole other problem.
Sure.
So it's tricky, and the scope of I just think a lot of contractors I've talked to and worked with as well, because this is not the first client I've talked to that's had this problem this year. I probably talked to like 7 different people within the span of like 2 months when it got really cold and warmed up that had this type of issue, the condensation dripping back in and having a vaulted ceiling and tongue and groove. The scope of work, how you install the foam, what type of foam you use, what the roof assembly looks like. Do you have venting or not? Do you have a secondary roof deck or not? Do you have exterior rigid insulation to reduce thermal bridging or not? Did you use open cell or closed cell? Do you have a vapor barrier underneath the open cell? Did you have a backer for your closed cell spray foam, or is it here directly to the back? All of those little details actually matter in this situation. You just have to be even more cautious when you are making a house more energy efficient.
Yes. And if you didn't want to have any of these problems, you could just have no insulation at all in your attic, and you could just pay a big energy penalty, but you wouldn't have any issues, right?
You would melt all the snow off the roof. Maybe if you had some
Never
big
have ice
soffits, you could have
dams.
some ice. Well, maybe. This house did have big overhangs, so I guess in theory, like if the soffit was big and they had
Okay,
enough snow melt, it could create an ice dam. But I hear what you're saying.
maybe.
Yes, if it's the roof is hot enough, you don't have a big overhang. Yeah, melt it all off, and you won't ever have ice dams. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's
You
a
won't have
trade-off.
frost
Yeah,
in your attic.
no.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if the roof stays warm enough because you've got so much heat loss happening, you're warming up the roof deck, it stays above freezing, then you're never going to have frost either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you want to eliminate all these problems, just pull all the insulation out. But okay, Tess, this is
Now
all
we're going
ridiculous.
backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going way backwards. We're never going back to that again. We will never do that again. We'll never build them without insulation and air
insulation.
sealing and without
Yeah.
making them as energy efficient. Well, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
we can. We can do more,
Yeah.
but we're making
Yeah.
them very efficient today. And
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for going backwards. That's never going to happen. What do we need to do to make it so we don't have problems in our houses to keep them durable?
We need to realize that houses are complex and to be able to look at the house like a building scientist, to think about how heat, air, and moisture moves through a house and how that impacts everything from comfort, energy efficiency to durability. And and just realize that houses are going to become a lot more well, I think we as occupants have become more finicky and picky about what we expect and desire in terms of comfort, temperature, and all that stuff. But our houses are going to become a lot more fragile as well. If you have a lot of, heat and air movement through these, assemblies, they can dry out. If you don't, well, then you really need to be cautious about any little bit of airflow you do have that's leaking through the building envelope. You need to really get dialed in about controlling that heat, moisture, and air in the structure and through the structure. So we just have to I think the first step is just education of all the people that work on houses out there. From my perspective, seeing this every day, all day, I mean, I'm like, okay, this is just like breathing. I understand this. But you'd be surprised at how many contractors are out there that build houses that don't understand those potential consequences of these incremental improvements or quote unquote energy improvements. And they do these things and they, okay, we'll just fill it with spray foam and that's great. And then they have no clue why their client is having all these condensation or moisture issues. So I think it just goes back to, helping contractors and builders and people that work with houses understand if you change one thing, you could impact another thing and create these
Yes.
unintended consequences. And you have to look at more than just this one thing that you're doing. You have to think, how does this one thing impact everything else?
Yes. I always think of it in my mind as like I think of like a sound control board, and you got one slider that adjusts the volume on the left speakers and another for the ones on the right. And
Yes.
and one of them is energy efficiency, and the other is solid building practices. And as soon as you slide one up, you're going to need to slide the other one up at the same time, or it's not going to be balanced. So if you're going to increase the efficiency here, what else are you going to do for the rest of the building to make sure that this doesn't cause problems? Like, okay, we're going to make our walls not leak a whole bunch of air. All right, we need to be way more detailed about our flashing on the outside, and we need to pay more attention to roof lines and making sure that our outside walls stay dry and nothing is leaking in if we're going to have a durable wall. It's all the levers need to move at the same time.
Agreed. And it's tough because everything, it's not just the flashing details and the design of the house and the roof, all that's important too, but then you have to think about the mechanical systems in the house and the ventilation strategies and everything. It's all connected. So I think it's just retraining people to realize that you have to take a holistic view when you're changing houses, and especially when you're making them more energy efficient. There is so much room for building performance problems, durability issues. mold problems, condensation when you do that, because you're taking away the transfer of energy.
Yes. And that is so well put, Tessa. You are removing the transfer of energy. And when you do that, the walls, everything becomes less happy.
Yeah, more fragile, as Pat Homan would say, my professor from U of M. Yeah, it is. Older houses were leaky, drafty, uncomfortable, expensive to heat and cool, but they were very durable, and he would say robust.
Yeah.
And compared to new construction, that is a lot more energy efficient, more insulation, it's more airtight, cheaper to heat and cool, a lot more comfortable inside, less temperature variations, but also a lot more fragile.
Yep. Well put, Tess. All right.
It's the trade-off.
I don't think we can do any better than that.
If anybody listening has any other thoughts on that or input, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to shoot us an email.
Yeah. Podcast at structuretech.com. We read them all. We want to hear from you.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Well, for next week, we've already got our guests lined up. We have a repeat guest, and we're going to talk about new ways to test air conditioners. We got former ASHI president and building, I shouldn't say building science, home inspection guru. He has taught a lot of classes over his career. Mark Kramer. Looking forward to this. He teased it a little bit on the phone for me, and it felt like it was way over my head, but I thought maybe if we do a whole podcast episode, maybe I'll be able to grasp what he's talking about here. So I'm really excited to dig into that with him.
Yeah, me too. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Reuben. This was a good discussion. And I think as we deal with more and more extremes with climate and the challenges with insurance and building more energy efficient homes and that becoming the norm, all of these little things we're talking about are just going to become more and more evident. And sometimes, a lot of times, humans, we learn the hard way. We don't change unless we have to. And so until you've been on the other side of that as a homeowner or a contractor and experienced the pain, why would you change? But I see that happening a lot because that is my world. So I think that's the direction we're heading. And it's going to be a process, but that may be a little painful process, but hopefully we're going in the right direction.
I think we're going in the right direction.
All right.
Thank you, Tess.
Good to see you. Yep. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Catch you next week.
Thanks.